Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 221st New Social Environment. I'm Emily Dean, a production assistant at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for the 23rd Radical Poetry Reading curated by Bob Holman. We're also thrilled to have the poets Samantha Thornhill, Dewi Prysor, Nancy Mercado, and Mohamad Hodeib here with us today. To begin, I ask you to join me in acknowledging the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and Shinnecock Indian Nation, the traditional owners of Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters on which we stand. Finally, the Brooklyn Rail stands in solidarity with the uprisings in response to the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Nina Pop, David McAdie, James Scurlock, Jamel Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks, Rhea Milton, Dominique Remy Fells, Toyin Salau, Walter Wallace Jr., and countless others we have lost to white supremacy and police violence in this country, and acknowledge that justice will come from the streets, from the nation demanding accountability and refusing to move on until Black Lives Matter in the eyes of the state. Before I introduce our curator, we'd like to begin with a brief moment of silence. Thank you. And now to introduce today's curator. Bob Holman's two new books, Life Poem and The Unspoken, were written 50 years apart, published by YBK Books a year ago. The book tour has been postponed until, well, we don't have a date yet. But 4 years ago, Bob was on the panel that selected Amanda Gorman, the first ever United States Youth Poet Laureate. Her inaugural poem showed the world how poetry can move the public sphere. Without the New York and Poets Cafe, Urban Word, and the Bowery Poetry Club, Amanda Gorman's voice would never have been heard. So let's hear it for Poetry Aloud, The Spoken Word, and Bob Holman. And Bob, I'm passing you the mic now.
Why, thank you very much, Emily Dean. This, of course, is the metaphorical microphone that we're going to use here today. It's also known as my hand. Well, it's super to be here with the Rail. You know, the most energetic publication, which means, of course, these days this digital media as well, in the world. And you got something to say? This is your platform. Get Fong on the phone, or better yet, just write him an email. Get on here, and thank you all for coming. People from all over the world, because that's what I wanted to do today, was take advantage of this Zoomer. And so we've got Samantha Thornhill here from Trinidad and Tobago. And we've got Dewi Prysor, not here yet, but I'm trying to get him here from Wales, from Blaenau-Festiniog, my favorite little town in Wales. And he's going to be reading in Cymraeg, in Welsh. And then we got from Lebanon, we've got Mohamad Hodeib, brilliant poet. You're going to really have a good time with him. And there he is. Hi, haven't seen you in a while. What's up? Okay, nod, nod, nod. And of course, Nancy Mercado, who is the La Jefa of the Miguelabrations, honoring Miguel Algarín and the great Nuyoriqueña poeta. So, you know, and she's speaking to us from the Nuyorican village, way uptown. So we'll be visiting everybody. I love you, and I can't wait to get the poem started. So what the heck? Emily, if you're ready, I think everybody else is.
Yes, thank you so much, Bob, and thank you for bringing everyone together here today. Our first reader will be Samantha Thornhill. Samantha Thornhill is an internationally traveled poet, educator, and curator from Trinidad and Tobago. After graduating with her MFA in poetry from the University of Virginia, Samantha moved to New York City, where for the past decade, she's been teaching poetry to actors at the Juilliard School, Additionally, she teaches creative workshops to the elderly as well as urban and rural youth. 17 literary journals and anthologies have featured her poems, and in 2010, Scholastic Books published her ode to the folk legend Odetta in picture book form. In 2014, Russell Simmons hired her to curate and produce poetry videos for his YouTube vertical, All Deaf Poetry. And I will post a slightly longer bio in the chat if you'd like to read more. But Samantha, I am passing you the mic.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Peace and love. Can you all hear me? Yes, I got the thumbs up. Okay, thank you so much, Bob Holman, for inviting me to join this gaggle of poets. And thank you to the Brooklyn Rail for creating the platform for us, for the vision of this reading, and for all of you here today. I guess I'm gonna read a few poems. I don't know how much time, I'm not sure if I know how much time I have, but let me know if I'm, overstepping, yeah? All right, so I'm gonna actually read the first poem I'm gonna read, actually, the Brooklyn Rail published this poem some years ago, and this was part of my group Crop of Poets. I created a group of poets along with two other poets, John Sands and Adam Faulkner. We created Poets in Unexpected Places, and we tasked ourselves with the joy of erupting into poetry in shared spaces. And that's the Q train, the laundromat, Victoria's Secret, wherever the wind.
Dewi, it's Bob. How come you're not on?
And Bob was a part of our pop-up installations many times. So the Brooklyn Rail was so gracious to publish a few of our poems. And so this poem, Ode to Gentrification, is a special one. So I'd like to start with this. Ode to Gentrification. Old school denizens of this bleach-boned block say, the realest thing about the white woman and her Yorkie on this reimagined street is the leather of the leash that tethers them. Your very name, glass splinter, planted deep in the fat of our vernacular, gentrification, rightly mistaken for juxtaposition, pretty boys with swagger, checkerboard chains, skyscraper sadness, bodegas sighing out soy, Peruvian girl and boy fattening fridges with Fiji between homework and dreams, while pop slices and dices, while moms rocks the register. Gentrification, kissing cousin to gratification. You birth gratitude, twin to regret. Call me regretful. I'm so sorry to thank you, gentrification, for the manner in which I participate in your cruel and convenient magic. You ushered out the families who dreamed where my head now rests. Yesterday, I retrieved laundry cleaner than bells, my unmentionables caressed by another's mother's hands. I sit on the upside of your coin, drinking in the sky's blue dregs, while the teens that I teach and the sturdy Black grandmothers I salute with my seat kiss concrete. So I don't know, Bob, if you remember this, but the beginning of our friendship started, I would say our friendship jump off was at Caracas, Arepa's bar. We first went to lunch there. Bob emailed me one day out of the blue and just wanted to get to know me. And we've been famous friends ever since. But at the end of our lunch, Bob asked me to spit a poem, and that was the one that I chose. So the fact that it was published in the Brooklyn Rail and that's the jump off poem of our friendship, I just thought it was so appropriate to start there. But I actually just thought of that. Wait a minute, I first performed Ode to Gentrification for Bob. So this second poem, Memory Lane, I know. So this second poem, on a sober note, it's called Bring Back. It speaks for itself. Bring back the brown faces, missing from milk cartons. Bring back our lost, our girls from Accra, Laventille, Guguletu, and the Bronx. Dredge them up from swamps on the hills of capitals. Bring back search parties, flashlights, small suns. Amber alert the diaspora to the town hall. Bring back our sons from their chalk outlines, caskets swallowing our boys like Jonahs. Bring back our men from lynch ropes, lead pipes, and Ivy League cages. Bring back our mothers from the caves in their chests. Bring back the souls of child traffickers and top dollar rapists, presidents, celebrities, and holy men who leave their masks chattering on nightstands in rooms wallpapered with children no milk box can save. Bring back our babies to their own beds left made and unmade. Bring them back to the whole village. Bring back with the whole village, each face a bead braided into its memory. Bring back, oh, Keita missing? Girl, she'd been at Darius's house since school let out. I thought you knew, child. This poem is called Illusion. Four baby birds, alone, in the high nest of a cherry tree. So safe, so safe. Four little girls in a church. This camel's back. Unconcerned with the needle in the haystack and the pot at the ass end of rainbows. No crusade for the magic stick or godmother's wand. Today I ponder the proverbial straw. We've journeyed this desert days now. Sandstorms to skin, cousin waters singing livid from hoses. In the distance, cacti echo arrested men. By day, we are candles burning at both ends. At night, we shiver like astronauts in our measly tents. This Everest on legs, this beast that schleps us all, requires more water than we have to give it, yet somehow we make do. If more boulevards named after dead men, if nooses resurrecting from shallow graves of history, if black gold proving yet again its invisibility to the scales of justice, if the reality of being life's lover but never the world's friend, if a sunken city or evolution towards bulletproof skin isn't straw enough, then it frightens me to think of what it will take to break this camel's back at last. All right. So this is a poem called How to Use African Black Soap. Maddening, the faucet's wine, but here, this soap. Hold its blackness close to your skin like a welt, or watch it slowly die in your hands like hope in its dimmest hour. As with love, careful not to grope too hard or it will escape like something you pelt. Maddening, the faucet's wine, but hold the soap. It will never belong to you, only its death. Like a trope, its blackness will never be yours, so watch it melt and dye your slowly wrinkling hands. Hope it never washes away like a kiss from the Pope, himself to a boy who served his faith and knelt, gladdened by the faucet's wine. And the soap, watch as it tries to outlast itself like a man on a rope. Smear the song of its vanishing on the walls, gather its silt. Watch it split and die across your hands like hope, against your wet prunes for fingers. Watch it cope within the halves of its ruination. Why weep now? You felt it vanishing under the faucet's wine, but you held the soap and watched it dye your hands black with its hope. What's up, y'all? All right. This next poem is, I wrote this with the memory of Judge Sheila Abdus Salam. This woman's death kind of always haunted me. I don't know if you remember this judge that they found in the East River, and they deemed it a suicide. This poem is called Minority Report. In the beat of Harlem's heart, I imagine a Black woman on her afternoon run, hands on knees, winded. Hunched over a scrap of the city's hem, she discovers her reflection in your bloated beauty, clothed and laced up in the river's clutch. Your Honor, from 3 feet of Hudson River water, the police lifted what used to be you, sluiced of breath. A lone Metro card to the land of no promises, bobbing in your pocket. Street cameras fossilized your last breathing moments by the water's edge, and before, strolling solo under a pink moon, the first full moon of spring. I imagine your fists drowning in your sweatshirt, free from phone and wallet, ready to swing. For how facile is it now for a hued justice gathering new foes under each gavel slam, to make her final ruling, belly up, waterlogged, unmolested brownstone, affinity for swimming, whispering bruise, married to your throat. So this next piece, thank you for all the energy, y'all. Appreciate you. Bob, I see Bob splashed across my screen. My buddy Bob, I love you. So this next piece was inspired by, hi Dale. There's this killer whale that killed its trainer in Florida some years ago. And man, oh man, I hadn't written poems in a while, but this one just sprung up out of me after I did some research, because I was just so curious, like why would this whale have done this orca? And I did some research into like how these orcas are treated at these facilities. And this was before the movie Blackfish came out. And then I started writing, and this poem kind of slid out of me in like perfect tercets, employing the voice of the enslaved African Kunta Kinte. Ode to a Killer Whale. Black boy, with a name and a plight like that, you might as well claim African. No matter your mama squeezed you into the dim waters of Iceland where you learned to hunt from top rung, spanning a cool 100 miles on a day's breath with enough time to frolic in the sunlight, shining down on the deep sea diver's soul delight. Some white boy's locker. Brother, had I known they were coming for you next, I would have sent conga cries straight through your orca heart to up jump the boogie before lasso logic and nigger nets. Alas, the same passage done born we to this troubled mass, and the same pink dolphin captivated us both into taking time-bound swimming circles inside their squares. Oh, how they love you to their greatest capacity, which is to say, shutting you up in a bathtub, training your charm into dollars you make rain for them, as they flip you over and milk your sperm from the cash cow you is, quelling all rebellions with rubs and rewards, only for your seeds to grow apart from you. Alas, they captured you, but are yet to contain the joy of your rage. Alas, you signify half the name they gave you, killer, 'cause bruh, you ain't no whale, just a more menacing dolphin. Shamu, Rambo, Sambo of sea. I mean to say, and Nat means to say, we spoke the other day, and Sister Harriet too. Boy, you got some dead folk praying for you. Done seduce your captors with your kind nets. May you do all that we tried in our ways to do, which is to say, like a bullet that burns with the president's name. Boy, save your masterpiece for the stage. I mean to say, killer whale, grip this ship by its sail and drag the whole thing down, 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 down. Woo! You can hear my little gospel growl come out, right? I can be sweet as pie, and I can growl too. So that poem is a persona piece, and I will say though that persona pieces that when I am able to write poems tapping into another perspective, something else takes over. Where like the times that I've written persona poems, I hardly remember writing them, and they just come out. And I'm a revisionist. Like, I'll write poems over and over and over and over, but those persona poems hardly need a lot of work. Like, they come out the way they come out, and I might like tweak it here and there, but it's a very mystical process. And even the process of sharing those poems too, just something else just like happens. And I really appreciate when it does. So thank you for taking that in. I'm gonna read one more piece. Thank you for being here. This is my ode to darkness. Dear darkness, I am that candle in your cavity, burning at both ends. My destiny to defy gravity, I soften in my ascent. You swallowed me like a pill, but I am more feast than supplement. Cosmic culprit, you inject your venom in a whisper. You shapeshift, slither. Without your face, suns wouldn't know their places. We'd be strangers to their shine. You reveal them ever faithfully, right on rhyme. Every sunset blows the whistle on how diligently you descend, no matter how bright the day had been. Easy to forget I was golden before you swirled in. Then I stopped walking the sunny sides of streets, my smiles growing slimmer. Fog hung its gray coats between my thoughts, draining my shimmer. No matter how clear the sky that day, you hovered like an umbrella, yet somehow in my way, stopping my path, stopping my joy, truncating my laugh. That was before I knew to protect my auric house against your termites, before I knew we were at war. Now, I throw up prayers, double helix my locks into Bantu knots and tighten the laces on my winged Timbs, preparing to elevate. This is how one learns that the stars are bullet holes. A prophet shot the heavens to let us know that the infinite's glow behind your twisted curtain is all that's real, fellow creation. My soul intends to survive these chapters and verses by tweezing blessings from your backhands and meditating to attune myself to the cosmic compass most high within us. Oh, darkness. I am that candle, burning at both ends. My twin fires dance, livid, test climbing through your bowels. Inside my ascension, I rise, through your illusions and limiting lies, up this epic spiral for the blinding shores and skies of paradise. Thank you all. I can feel your applause. I appreciate you. Snaps.
Thank you so much, Samantha. That was incredible. Next, we will hear from Dewi Prysor, author, poet, and historian. He has published 6 novels, 2 collections of poems, and a travelogue of his memories of following the Welsh national football team through France during Euro 2016, Ibuprofen s'il vous plaît. 3 of his novels have reached the Wales Book of the Year shortlist, and his first novel, Ladu, Killing God, won the Goldwyn 360 People's Choice Prize in 2011. And I'm going to post a longer bio in the chat, and I'm passing you the mic now, Dewi.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Yeah. God. Okay then, can you hear me all right? Can you nod, somebody? Right, okay. Thank you, Brooklyn Rail, for the invite, and thank you, Bob, for the invite, and thanks to Samantha for some wonderful poetry there. I was riveted to the spot. I do write a lot of political poems, but most of them will come out as a raging rant. So I use some of my recent poems about our heritage as well as Celtic people and our history, which gets it isn't taught us in schools, and they try and dismiss anything that we ever done. They don't believe that we have a heritage, yet we have heritage and art and history going back thousands of years, and I write a lot of poems about that. And this first poem is called Bryn Cader Fanner. It's a ring cairn, a burial cairn. Now it is just stones, and used to be a grave, and there used to be earth over it, but the earth has gone now, and the stones, outer stones, or the ring cairn, they look like a carcass. Some say they look like what's called a crown, but they look more like a carcass of our history being pecked by ravens or whatever. But these monuments, they buried people, and then people, high kings or chiefs or whatever, and but they didn't just bury them there. They placed the grave and the cairns and the standing stones, and used the landscape as part of these monuments. And this particular monument, because this is the first instance of public art, if you like, and they use the landscape to brilliant effect. And so Bryn Cader Fanner, this ring cairn, is older than most of the pyramids in Egypt. So here it goes, Bryn Cader Fanner. Maen nhw'n darganfod pethau newydd amdano ni weithiau yn ôl eu rhaglenni teledu. Pethau rydyn ni'n wybod erioed. Daethom yma, meddan nhw, pan doddodd yr hew, dim ond I gael un dal nes ymlaen wrth i'r môr godi a'n gwahanu o'r cyfandir. Ond ydyn ni'n gwybod hyn, da ni'n cofio cantre'r gwaelod. Gan amlaf yr un hen drefn yw hi, Israddio, anwybyddu, celu, a dileu hoel ein traed o dirlun hanes. Cawsom ein dysgu, meddant, gan newydd ddyfodiaid mwy galluog na ni, I greu crochenwaith a thri nefydd. Nid rhannu syniadau a chydweithio, o na, nid ni, oedd yn gweld gwynebau mewn creigiau ac yn nŵr y llyn, yn adnabod y golau a chwipiadau'r gwynt. Ni fi ganddo mareiddiad o unrhyw fath, meddyd, ni y bobl gyn hanesyddol, heb gastell, heb werth, ond dros 4,000 o flynyddoedd yn ôl, roedd yn creu celfyddyd cyhoeddus fel hyn, a'r tirlun yn rhan o'r llun, y meini'n fframio'r mynydd, neu'n dynwarad am linell y gorwel, neu fel ymryn Cader Fanner, yn creu llwyfan I Eryri a'r môr a'r meini serenu, a dod â dau fyd ynghyd I gofio un o'n hanwyliaid. 4,000 o flynyddoedd yn ôl, 4,000 o flynyddoedd yn ôl, roedd ein gwareiddiad eisoes yn hen, ac yma ar y llwybr rhwng Ardudwy a'r byd, mae'n hathroniaeth cyn hyned ar ser. that's the first one. I hope you liked it. I know you won't understand the language because it's Welsh, and I forgot to say that I do write mostly in Welsh. But you know, writing in Welsh on its own is quite political, especially in the climate, the political climate here in the UK, which is absolute madness with all these right-wing nut jobs and English imperialism and everything. Anyway, this next poem is sort of in the same kind of vein, but it's called Maen Llwyd, which means grey stone. It's a standing stone. Menhirs, you probably don't get them on that side of the Atlantic, but we here in Britain and especially on the west side of Britain, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and Brittany over on the continent, we have standing stones, and they can show the way to places, and they can also be parts of rituals, and they go back to the early Bronze Age, and some of them go back to the Stone Age. But what I've seen in this poem is that this standing stone, this grey stone, looks like an old man, and he's been standing there for 4,000 years. And the things, I just imagine the things that he's seen, the weather changes, climate changes, soldiers moving from place to place. He's seen history being made. He's seen forests grow and die, some forests burn, you know what I mean? So I imagine him as some kind of man who works in a museum, but he hasn't got hands to write, to record history. He just keeps it in his head or in the veins and in the moss, the green moss that grows over the stone. So that's what this is, and it's a shame that you can't understand it, but I suppose you can feel the vibe. Okay. Maen Llwyd. Mae o'n sefyll fan hyn ers milawdau, yn dyst tawel I wyntoedd amser. Y cofiadur prydd yn ei gofl o fwsog, yn nodi pob diwrnod a nifer y ser. Gwelodd 100,000 o lwyadau llawn, clywodd glec y garreg a thinc yr hyaern, carnau'r meirch yn croesi'r rhyd a'r dŵr yn goch. Y gwyliwr llwyd a'r frân ar ei ysgwydd, gwyliodd goed deri o'r mes i'r mawn, ei gweld nhw'n gwiro yn agosach i'r llawr I gyffwrdd ei greiddiau. Gwelodd wernydd yn llosgi a marwydos Bedwen yn diffodd fesul un, fel nodau caneuon yr adar fu nythu yn ei brigau. Tybed a fu'r gwyliwr yn hiraethu am sŵn ei greiddiau yn ymestyn trwy'r ddaear o'i amgylch. A'i tynherwch glaw mynydd yn unig fy'n lleithio'r mwsog ar ei rydd. Daeth fforestydd eto yn ei tro I fynd a dod, a'i hadar wythau gyda nhw. Ond coedwig heb nyth na chan yw hon, y wig fyd ddifywyd. Coed heb reiddiau, heb flagur na dail, na haul, na thincian hyaern. Mae o'n sefyll o hyd ar garpad o seithau, yn dyst tawel I ddiflaniad y wernen. Yr henwr llwyd unig, a'i leuadau llawn straeon, a gwlyth glaw mynydd ar ei rydd. Thank you. Strange working through Zoom and that. I usually go up on the stage and bore people. This poem is very recent because, as you know, we're on the third lockdown here in Wales with this the coronavirus pandemic, and we got used to it now. You know, it's something that we have to do, so we can't complain about it. So we all stick by the rules and all that. But one of the things I keep thinking about is because that the loss of going out to the pub or the effect on social life, and one of the main things we miss is the cwtch, the embrace. Yeah, in Welsh it's called the cwtch, and also coflaid. And that's what we say in our part of Wales, coflaid, but it means a hug. And we miss that hug, you know, as if the hug, I call the poem Exile, because the hug isn't in our lives anymore. It's somewhere distant, but only 2 meters away. So that's what I'll read for you now. Okay then, alltid means exile. I ble est ti goflaid gynnes, ti a dy hael oedd yn llenwi'r drws, ti oedd yn cael y plant I neidio I dyfrichiau crwn, a'i lapio fel mewn blancad o gariad a sicrwydd a hwyl. Ymhler wyt ti goflaid gadarn, ti oedd yn gefn pan oedd y byd yn fy mrest, yn agor y dorau a throi y merddwyr rhydd. I'll say that again. Ymhler wyt ti goflaid gadarn, ti oedd yn gefn pan oedd y byd yn fy mrest, yn agor y dorau a throi y merddwr llwyd yn rhaeadrau melyn a gyrru'r cysgodion o fy mer. I fler oedd y goflaid y reddfol, eiliad orau'r ddynol ryw, alltu dwyd mewn byd perllenig draw tu hwnt i'r ffin dwy lath, a ninnau dy angen fwy pob dydd. Tybed wyt tithau hefyd yn gweudu I gael teimlo cyd-guro calonau dau, rhywle yn agos ond eto mor bell. Wyt ti'n cofio'r cofleidio ecstatic pan oedd Cymru'n sgorio gol, pawb I gyd mewn gwynfyd coch yn bwnsio fyny a lawr gan gydio yn unrhyw un o fewn cafael, a throi di eithriaid yn frodyr a chwiorydd yn y llawenydd heb ddiwedd. Yr Ewros yn ein aros eto ar wen ar wyneb pob un mor lydan a'r hafren, fel y Nirvana yn Seneca a croeso Ffrainc yn Bordeaux. Wyt ti'n cofio'r miloedd o gofleidiau I gyd yn dy goflaid di? Be ddaw ohonot alltyd unig, a be ddaw ohono ni, a'i alltudion fyddwn ninnau yn y normal newydd llwyd, yn bwydo ar atgofion wrth ymbellhau o'n hunain ein hun. Neu, a ddoed I nôl yn goflaid gynnes, cyn i'r byd dy anghofio di. It's a bit heavy, like, it's more hopeful than heavy, to be honest. And I'll finish with this short poem and an English translation of it. The English translation was made by poet Mike Jenkins from Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales. And this poem was in this book they published with a translation. So it's called Copawon, which means summits, mountaintops. And I go walking up mountains all the time, so it means something to me. Copawon. Llefydd sanctaidd yw'r rhain, llwyfannau hunaniaeth eu hawelon yn ffrwd ffraeth rhwng pilpudau'r pedwar gwynt. Yma mi weli dy fro yn troi'n wlad a thwad yn troi yn fyd, ac mi glwyd y lais yn morio dros donau diddiwedd o dir a dychwelyd yn chwedlau I gyd. Summits. These places are sacred, theatres of identity where wisdoms stream on the breeze between the pulpits of the four winds. Here you see your locality turn into a country and your country into a world. And hear your voice howling over endless waves of land to return full of legends. There we go. That's all for now, folks. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for invites. And hey, Bob, brilliant. Thank you very much. So I'm gonna sit back now and enjoy all the other poets. Big shouts to Samantha. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed your poems. So goodbye for now.
Thank you so much, Dewi. That was so wonderful. Next, we will hear from Nancy Mercado, the recipient of an American Book Award for Lifetime Achievement and named among the Frederick Douglass 200 on the anniversary of Douglass's birthday. Nancy Mercado is the editor of the New York and Women's Writers Anthology, published in Voices e-magazine, a Hunter College City University of New York online literary journal. She is a guest curator for the Museum of American Poetics and assistant editor for ecopoetry.org, a website dedicated to addressing the issues of climate crises. And Nancy, I am passing you the mic, and I will paste a slightly longer bio in the chat once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here, an honor, and I want to thank Bob for the invite. And also Brooklyn Rail for including me. It's an honor to be here with the other wonderful poets that are here and everyone else that's listening in. Thank you for listening. Today, President Biden signed a climate change executive order. Thank goodness that we're, in this space at this moment. And he declared today is I guess Wednesdays are going to be climate change day in the White House, which is really refreshing. So I'm saying that to say that the poems I'm going to read today will have to do with that, with the climate crisis, which is an existential threat to all of life on Earth. Not just human beings, but everything that's here, animals and fauna and flora. First piece I'll read is a poem I wrote after I went a year after Hurricane Maria devastated the island of Puerto Rico, completely devastated it. They're still recovering actually from that hurricane. It was a Category 5, and it just wiped out pretty much the already terrible infrastructure that they have there. And so I went a year later and I still could see, the devastation that occurred. That coupled with a lot of other things that have been going on. They've tried to systematically destroy the university there, defunding it, and a host of other things. They've also closed. Before the hurricane, they were closing schools, down, elementary schools and high schools and things of that sort. But now there's even more. Unfortunately, with the pandemic and everything else, it's even gotten worse. So this first piece is called I Come to See for Myself on the anniversary of Hurricane Maria. I fly in to see for myself below blue tarps over the homes of my nation, like those silver blankets that cover the souls of Mayan and Arawak children locked inside cages on the mainland I left behind. Arriving home, I enter a mass of confusion. Plantain crops walloped in their places of birth. 5-foot-tall grass rebelliously advancing to heaven. My mother's lemon tree on her last leg hunched over, barely breathing. I witness it for myself. Splintered wooden electrical poles held up by a neighbor's twine. Trees arrowed through one another, now growing sideways, surviving. Not the palm trees, though. The palm trees chose victory or death, no in-between half-hearted living, some growing new hair, others simply guillotined by Maria's detonation. I walk into the new growth of forest, detect the low lamenting sounds of the injured there, witness the anger etched inside into the undulating mountains surrounding me in the distance. I see the US cavalry arrive just in time, Cortez and Columbus repackaged into a 21st century nightmare. Armies in metallic flying machines using talking devices, exchanging messages in a foreign language through invisible airwaves. I see the cavalry arrive to help themselves to the casinos they built, to hurl paper towels at the local mortician, to seize their opportunity to maximize on the extinction of the natives, keeping them in drawn out darkness with no power to run hospitals, no shelter, with no water. I crossed the land from west to east, south to north, to see the revelers and the ruins for myself, to lend an ear to survivors and to the dead, see shuttered schools for miles along the route. I run out of fingers on which to count them all. Part of the plan to ruin us, a small voice reminds me. I walk along the turquoise shores lined of amputated homes, crumbled fences, collapsed doorways into the sea. Inside, bits and pieces of families remain, their vestiges now across the Atlantic at the opposite end. Back in Ponce, I sit in my mother's rocking chair, watch my neighbor's hummingbirds who've arrived to visit her ruby coral bells. I think of my father's strength and his humility. He walked in silence, built a house to withstand a cyclonic catastrophe. I've seen for myself the natives are the majesty of this world. Together, they cleared the paths, sawing, hewing through mammoth barriers of deceit and loathing, retrieved their own water, traversing the inundation of Washington's elite that vowed to drown them. They went about their lives by the light of a candle or an old wooden light post they stitched back together with all the love on earth, maneuvering through a world of cadavers. Inside Maria's eye, amid the tantrums of the privileged, a nation held its ground. Now rises its foundation of ancestral eminence anew. The next piece that I'll read has to do with the election of, or not. I don't even know if it was an election. The stealing of the presidency by Trump and his gang. When that it was one of the darkest moments in my life. This poem came out of that experience. When he began his presidency, that first day here was horrible. It was dark, gray, gloomy, cold. It was just everything about it, predicted doom, utter doom, So ushering in Armageddon on the eve of Trump's election. We rapidly disappear all drinkable water, ramming engorged steel pipes like a rapist's penis into the earth, injecting its insides of vile poisons, lacerating its core, leaving warm, radiant grasslands stippled of gray, gaseous machines, rusting, oozing mucus onto the countryside, choking vaporous clouds rising from rivers, waterways cloaked with upended salmon, beaver, birds, assorted insects we'd yet to encounter. Mass extinctions of other life forms run amok before us, because of us. We indulge in gluttony, zealots for crude oil, nuclear fuel, and intangible futures. We indulge in greed, craze for imbecilic video games, prime time and commercial ads, making others rich and our minds poor. We coddle our narcissism, The idea that we are invincible, all-knowing, masters of the universe, superior to all life forms, yet ignorant of countless creatures inhabiting black depths at the bottom of our own planet's seas. We sentence ourselves to wrath, placing madmen at the helm of a nuclear empire. We fornicate with money and palm oil lovers, torching vast swaths of Earth's forests, decimating acres at whim. We sentence ourselves to deception, choosing fanciful illusions. We are Leviathan stars on a global stage, existing only inside the flat screens of our cracked skulls. We sentence ourselves to sloth, lethargically sitting by, witnessing the implosion of even our own families, never lifting a finger, never troubling our carcasses out of cushy, cheap sofas bought at Walmart on Veterans Day sales. We splatter everything over of syrupy affirmations that disguise our crimes, that mask our cataclysms, our inertia, our self-inflicted Armageddon, like a junkie shooting up that last dose of bad endings, a rehashed nightmare. How utterly foolish we are. I was really upset at humanity at that point. Anyway. Now these next two poems, which will be the last ones that I'll read, have to do with they're more recent, and they have to do with the plague. This one's called Journey from the Plague. Hellish sirens bend with distance through a day's gray mist. The sounds of birds emerge, claiming my mind's eye. My mother appears. My childhood appears. My mother shields us from freezing, unbridled winds, using a butter knife, stuffing toilet paper into our rattling, cracked window frames. I follow her, mimic her at 7 or 8. I follow my mother from window frame to porous window frame. Then sirens dissolve my memory again, return to my cloistered quarantine. Do I hurl myself into a shuttered city, emptied, hollowed out, save for ambulances transporting the dead, birds and pigeons, insects and mice, the trees and the flowers of spring? And the last piece that I'll read is titled Plagued America. It takes a plague to crystallize the malignancy occupying the White House that churns out death, a gross carnage of humanity stockpiled inside U-Haul trucks. It takes a plague to breach the lies we live in this America, burying its mercenary truths, its decomposing laws, scavenged by elected vultures. A plague is what it takes to realize red baseball-capped buffoons can freely amass assault rifles, the privileged, scant, illiterate, and starved, lined up for miles to reach food banks, gleefully waving soiled Confederate flags in tatters. A plague must be what it takes to discover our illusory lives, the hamster wheel we've been sold, traveling on it all along toward manufactured dreams, toward nowhere in reality. It takes a plague to recognize we are orphans in this America, sparing no expense. We're marked for ruin by the slothful elites who bask in swimming pools of our blood. A plague is what it takes to wake up from this American dream, to see our children encaged, our mothers, our fathers butchered in broad daylight, our homes mired in soot water, our lands laced of oil pipelines discharging at whims, scouring valleys filled of life, decimating our future under a foul, dark layer of evil. A plague must be what it takes for our redress in the streets of this America, our decisive rebellion, our final renaissance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
Mhm.
That was amazing. Next, we will hear from Mohammed Hodeib, I believe. Mohamed Hadibe is a Brooklyn-based cultural activist and producer born and raised in Beirut. Mohammed experiments with words, flow, sound, and performance, rambling between sidewalks, coffee shops, bars, and stages since 2009. Featured in numerous forums and art platforms, including TEDx, Bowery Poetry Club, and the New Yorker Poets Cafe, co-founder of Al Yafta, Band of Poets and Literary Circle. He hosts poetry shows and directs writer workshops since 2011, and his first collection of Lebanese colloquial poems was published in 2013. And Mohammed, I am passing you the mic now.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, wait.
Yes.
Hi. Thank you all. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Bob, for contacting me. I'm just going to premise with this. I've spent the last 3 months preparing for my PhD qualifying exams in history. So I have not been able to look or write or read anything that is outside the academic realm. It's kind of feeling guilty about not doing enough work for the exam. And when Bob told me about this reading, I was ecstatic. I was so excited because finally I'm going to come back to something that is rejuvenating for me. Especially that it's a radical poetry reading, which I've been doing unintentionally at first. For those who don't know, I was born and raised in Beirut, and I started writing influenced by a generation of poets that were writing in the late 70s and the 80s, many of them who were militant, and by a range of international an international canon that I made for myself. Well, my whole project centers around writing in the colloquial, in the spoken Lebanese dialect. So I come here bearing Arabic letters and script. Even though I did prepare some introductions, I have 2 texts that I would like to share. Since I moved to the States, I've had this big kind of, let's say a dilemma on whether I should make a switch and write in English, and what can I write in English, given that I write in Lebanese just like I cook in Lebanese, just because I was born and raised in that space. And by space, I don't mean really place, I mean that whole experience. In the end, I made a conscious decision to proceed with writing in colloquial Lebanese, even if it's in this context, for there is something beyond political about it. This is who I am. And as everybody on this land, we're all immigrants. We all came here. And I decided that I'm no longer gonna hide that or put that away or be afraid that I'm not reaching as much an audience as I possibly can. But for that sake, I will also do some introductions. I brought 2 pieces today with me, which in a way or another center on the sensory experience, especially the act of listening. The first one literally translates into annulment. In Arabic, it's hajr, and it translates into annulment in the kind of Eastern Orthodox sense of the word, used to describe a marriage that could never terminate, but which kind of ends with the 2 partners leaving each other. But in that biblical sense of their spirits will forever be connected. It comes out of this experience of one night, a very cold night in March, when I was trying to get back home. And I'm small, right? And I'm a child of the sun. I was born and raised in Beirut, very Mediterranean. So I was wrapped in one big puffy jacket, a bigger beard, a keffiyeh around my neck, and big headphones listening to Arabic rap. But for many people in New York, a bearded Arab with a huge jacket on the train is a suspect. Just like as many people grab their wallets when they see a certain character. So on my way out of the train and I'm shivering, I smiled to someone and he freaked out. And that the poem came out of that experience. And I'm pretty much trying to describe that moment with kind of the background idea of, being in a state of alienation, which is a dual alienation, an alienation from the language, as well as an alienation from the space, from the experience, from being familiar with everything around me. And here it goes. هجر. عم دوخ. ضغط الطقس والسيجارة من بيروت نارة ولع صاروخ بغرفة مغلقة. غربة جسد والروح بالفكرة معلقة من المكان مطلقة. والخلق ضيق كلمانه بيضيق. والحيطان عم تكبس على بعضها والشباك ضيق كرماله بيضيق فالشمس برا ما بتفوت. وغربة الموعود بالنور بتعود مع نور مفقود. بالليل أفكار عم تحرق براسك بارود وجنود بالليل بتعود لتكب فتاش وحروق بارود عقنة جرح بالليل موقود عقرصة برد ما بتردها نار وعزل حيطان وتسميك اللحف. النصوص عن هالمكان ما بتوفي شروط الوصف الدقيق. المغترب مش مكان بل حريق. طار السقف من زمان لصار البيت بيوت الله الواسعة. وأنا بين الحقيبة بإيدي وصليبي عكتف الدعسة ناقصة بس لسه قادر لأني على الهدى طالعة. انتلات الورم بجرية زي ابن بطوطة ومش المشكل بالوعر. معروفة من خوضة بس هالسفرة من دون مخطوطة وهالشوارع مش آلف خطوطة. عتم الحرارة تحت الصفر عادي مش هون أنا عم بضحك للتلج عم فكر شك فيه. الأفضل اندمج بس بشك فيه طريق من دون حاجز بين حريق نار بضلوعي وزمهرير التلج كالحريق والغريب العابس. مساني بسلام غريب مزيج بين البشة والنقزة والكره المرتسم تعابير ارتباك من الغريب المبتسم. غريق بالجليد بالراس صوت الراس على الربيت عم بغني من الجليد. ولو كنت قادر دشر الغيمة وفجر الليل لرد الشمس أو ارجع لفجر عناوين الشوارع كنت بترك هالمدينة وبرد بس مش قادر إلا على الحطة. وأنا مش قاشع قبالي مخبى بالحطة والسماعات عديني بس مني أطرش نبض قلبي بلا انتظام والتقطيش واضح بكتر ما بهالكلمات عم بتفركش. بوقع بقوم بعلي بطير بطبش ما بتفرق. فايت هالدرب على الأخير. همي صار إني كمل هالطريق ولو من دون وجهة. مسافة طريق البيت من دون وجهة. همي صار إني كمل هالطريق. أرخ الموت البطيء من دون وجهة. دقيقة استراحة لراجع كتابتي. كمل اكتب نوت عندك يا رفيقي. رسالة زمهرير التلج كالحريق بس الخطى ثابتة. So I end that text on a note that leaving home or the act of returning home, on a note rejecting an act of quote unquote returning home. For in this text, I am listening to, and I was actually, I based this text on a rap song by a Lebanese artist, a hip hop song, a hip hop track. And the rhythm was inspired by his kind of the rhythm of his beat. And I end on the note rejecting the notion of returning home, for it is never, ever going to be an act of going back. Home is motion forward, is movement forward. And the second text I chose deals with that, but also deals with the general sense of a third level of alienation that I started experiencing after lockdown, which was hilarious because it brought back so many of those even generational traumas of my parents and what it means to stockpile and what we need, coming out of a war generation. But also the idea of coming to a place where New York is supposed to be my field of play and then being forced back into a house, into the limits of one home. And as we all know, New York apartments are not designed to be lived in. They're more like lodging quarters. And this next text focuses more on the act of listening and it's called Turn On the Radio. And it's about seeking a sense of familiarity, serenity, comfort in the sound of Fairuz, who's an Arabic diva very similar in cultural capital to Ella Fitzgerald or Billie Holiday. ضوي الراديو ضوي الراديو وضلك فلفش بين الخشخشة ليطلع صوت فيروز، وبس تسمع صوت فيروز علي الصوت واحكي وشوشي. حاكم وضعك مش تمام بس مبسوط بالمصاب، دربك مثل ضرب العجام بس الكرب فردي. عم بتحارب عتمة قلبك بكبريتي، عم بتخرز جوعك بخبزة وزبدة. بلا حجاب واقف متعري متخلي متجرد متشرد من شق، وحولك سموم الواقع مثل الشتاء هاطلة. سرساب من الغاب ولد عندك أرق مزمن، عصب يرجف عرق طق، ودوى الأعشاب بلا جدوى. كون السردة عاطلة، كونك مدمن على الصحوة، فقد ما تشد الرخوة فقد ما تشد السردة بتضل رخوة. وعلى الصبح قد ما حامي دمك برقع جلدك مثل الرغوة. فقوم اغلي قهوة وقوي الدوز وضوي الراديو وضلك فلفش بين الخشخشة ليطلع صوت فيروز. So those are the two texts that I brought with me for my own work. How are we doing on time? I'm just gonna ask real quick. I know we said like 10 something, I'm on 7 minutes. So I could share one more thing, which is reading the description for the event and the idea of bringing in poems that inspired us or kind of that were formative to our work. I was looking through some of the poems online and I came across one of my personal favorite poems written by a Lebanese poet in 1982. His name is Khalil Hawi. And a known kind of innovator in the language, in the what became known as contemporary poetry or free verse in Arabic. And this poem was written during the siege of Beirut, during the Israeli invasion. This poet committed suicide in August 1982 at the moment when the Israelis finally managed to break the siege and enter the city. The sense of indignation he felt made him just put a rifle in his head and pull the trigger, not wanting to experience the defeat. It is a very strong poem, and quite honestly, it's not just formative to me in the sense of writing, it also inspired me to start doing the work that I do as a PhD student, working on this generation of radical songwriters and poets from that era. I looked up the translations online for that poem, and honestly, I didn't like them too much, so I gave it a shot myself. And I also tried to personalize it in a way. I don't believe in bleak translations, so I gave it a bit of my twist or the way I understand it. I'm going to share a small part of that poem. It's called The Bridge, Al-Jisr. What I'm really interested in is how he defines his brethren, quote unquote, the children of the soil, which is a very transnational identity. Sufficient for me are my kin, the children of this soil, and their love is sustenance. I harvest it like the fruits from my field, and I am content with the harvest festival, recurring, every time a new life illuminates our gloom. For I hold no love for the barren, not for their perfumed redolence, gold, treasures, and wines, their offsprings born but a senile bat. For I hold no love for the barren, not for their perfumed redolence, gold, treasures, and wines, and their offsprings born but senile bats. Where is the Almighty? She who holds the power to exterminate and rejuvenate, redeem and renew, who can mold that child anew, wash him in oil and sulfur from the rusts of time. Where is she who destroys, then redeems and renews, who breeds eagles from a chained womb? They crossed the bridge at dawn, light-footed. I laid my ribs out like a solid bridge for them, so they cross at dawn, light-footed. From the caverns and swamps of the old into the future, I laid out my ribs before them like a solid bridge. They will pass on while you remain, an idol abandoned by its prophets, left for the wind to lash and burn, an idol, empty-handed, crucified in solitude, in the pale horizons of glacial nights, in the fiery ashes of hunger, in frozen tears through sleepless nights. The morning greets you with the daily news that you consume, probe, and digest in solitude, empty-handed, crucified in solitude, as they move on past you. Silence! I must abate this owl pounding inside my chest, the owl of history pounding inside my chest. What does she demand of me? What do I owe her anyway? For the treasures in my chests do not peril with time. My treasures, a tranquil conscience, happiness fulfilled by the faith in the unfolding and the truth of memory. My life in bloom, which I spent in nurturing and sustenance. I've stored them like treasures in my trunks, like wine and firewood, along with the nourishing love of my kin, the children of this soil. I sow their love like harvest, and I am content with the field and the harvest festival. I no longer fear the storm and the snow. I have enough wine and firewood, and I am content. Thank you all. It was a pleasure. I'm going to pass on the mic now.
Oh, thank you so much, Mohamad. That was incredible. And last but not least, we will hear from our curator for the day, Bob. So I'm just going to pass it back over to you.
Thank you very much there, Emily. Wow, this has been super. I've got to tell you, we need more language. Yes, we do. And languages. And, you know, I just want to give a nod to each of the poets. Samantha, who we did a little tour of Hungary a few years ago. This was before she gave birth to the two little boys who were behind her. And I wish we could have seen them because they're the stars of the show. But Samantha has spent the last year trying to get back to Trinidad, where her husband is. And I put in, or Emily put in in the chat, she will kill me for doing this, but anybody wants to make a contribution to help her get back there. Finally, she's legally allowed. She got passports for the little boys. And so you can do that. And Sam's poetry, of course, missed so terribly. Dewi Prysor is my true Welsh brother. And Dewi and I actually walked the summits there in Blaena Festiniog. And to hear his Welsh and his Welsh accent, I mean, it's so different, isn't it, from Scottish and Irish? But you never get to hear Welsh, you know, because the Welsh people, instead of fighting like the Irish did for their independence, they protested for language parity. And the Welsh language is the only language that's come back from the endangered list, thanks to Dewi Prysor and everybody else in North Wales, who continues, and there's South Wales too now, but continues to speak Welsh as the mother tongue. So thank you, Dewi, and I'll see you at Itap. Oh, he and I were both in Istomp, which is the National Poetry Slam of Wales. I slammed in Welsh. You can see that in Language Matters, the film on PBS. Okay, so then comes Nancy. Nancy and I have been working very closely lately for the Miguelabration because of the death of our dear brother and father, Miguel Algarín. And Nancy's poetry also needs much more of an audience because it's not your standards. You know, she's got her own political intent, as you heard, and she's ready to rock it. And we need that rocket. And Mohamad, thank you so much. Shukran. That was the great, you know, as always. And to take time off from getting his PhD, you all know what that is like. That's very meaningful for us. Thank you, all four of you and all the audience that's stuck with us here now. Look, there's more people here now than there. Anyway, I'm gonna start with a couple of poems of Audre Lorde's. on February 18th at 6 p.m., on February 18th at 6 p.m. at St. John the Divine, or Zooming from St. John the Divine, Audre Lorde is going to be the next inductee into the Poets Corner. I'm one of the people that selects that, and I'm so proud and happy for Audre Lorde to be honored in that way. And I'm going to read just a section of this poem, Martha, that was a poem she wrote to her lover. And it was the first poem in which she came out as a lesbian. So that's not the part I'm going to read. I'm going to read the part that reminds me of the plague writing. It's a nice, epic, long poem. You can read it for a long time. I'm going to read the part that reminds me of the plague that's going on, of the COVID. I found you today in a womb full of patients, blue-robed in various convalescences. Your eyes are closed. You're propped into a wheelchair, cornered, a parody of resting. The bright glue of tragedy plasters all eyes to a television set in the opposite corner where a man is dying, step by step, in the American ritual going. Someone has covered you for this first public appearance in a hospital gown, the badge of your next step. Evocative voices flow from the set. Horror is thick in this room, full of broken and mending receptions. Audre Lorde from her poem, Martha. And I'll read another. This is a short poem, which I always thought she wrote to me and a bunch of other people too. It's called Hard Love Rock Number 2. Listen, brother, love you, love you, love you, love you. Dig me a different colored grave. We're both lying side by side in the same place where you put me down. Deeper still, we are aloneness, unresolved by weeping, sacked cities not rebuilt, by slogans, by rhetorical pricks, picking the lock that has always been open. Black is not beautiful, baby, beautiful, baby, beautiful, let's do it again. It is not being screwed twice at the same time, from on top, as well as from my side. Audre Lorde, okay. February 18th, that's a Thursday night, 6 o'clock. I'm gonna read the second, okay, what's the name of the second poem? That poem is Hard Love Rock 2, Mia. There you go, down in Kentucky or Tennessee, wherever you are right now. I'm gonna read two fairly recent poems. This one is actually a poem that is up on the web along with many of the murals. You remember about a year ago in March here on the Bowery, all over New York City, that was the apocalypse we lived through. And then people put the boards up over the storefronts, which made it even worse. And then out came the artists to paint on them and made it into an open air gallery that raised everybody's spirits. And that's what this is about. It was an exhibit actually that's Sono Kuyama made over at the Howl Gallery. And you can see the murals along with this poem up on YouTube or wherever. It's called This Is What Democracy Looks Like. Murals on Bowery Bring Back Bowery Project. Bleaker than bleaker, barer than nada in Nadia. A plywood desert out my window on the Bowery, a siren of silence, blind leading the blinder, looters, cops, ruder, brutes, systemic collapse, and a sick rose, slashed tiredness, buffeted by pandemic waves. Racism pulls nerves from our bodies using iron stupidity clips. Fascism laying hot macadam on our wounds. The leadership, is tyranny. And then The artists get a hold of it. Sprung rhythm, art, garden, splash, walls, blossom, Black Lives Matter. Many's the days and many's the ways and many's the time come before as the dead and the dying and the violent lying wait covidly, patiently next door. The Bowery resurrects. Now there's a next. See, there's a lot more to go than's before, and the art that you see lifts infinity as you stop dead in your footsteps and roar. Up the ladder with the brush and rush. Yes, there's hardly a cloud in the sky. Scooters punched them in their plywood nose. So stop your gab and chatter, spell out Black Lives Matter. The flowers beckon a good luck spot, I reckon. Emmett Till is still here, dressed in colorful crack. A blessing for the homeless. Bowery Mission sidewalk is tattooed with poem's shadow. No one shall utter the debt owed to wonder. All together now, call out the name that's not anonymity's and anonymity's face on the walls of grace. George Floyd is breathing again. More art than's ever been seen before. It's a gift. It's capitalism's grave. There's no one to recall. Bounce back from the fall into summer heat's saving grace. There's no justice in America, but it's the fight for justice that sustains you, Baraka says. Cross from his pad on Cooper Square, where Hetty still lives, and the murals that give sustain us on the streets where we live. Individual power dies twice every hour to be born down in utopic Foley Square. I saw you on your bike with your mask and your strike and the placards that gleamed in the pools of your dream. Oh, artists, indefatigable rascals of love, the looters and shooters and dumbass computers lie down in the middle of the street. But BLM keeps on marching. It's the Bowery's fortune, and the past is the future again. Don't tell us what to do with the nail and the screw, with the paint and the roller, bucket and rags in a stroller. Dance on the graves of the rich and enslave those who'd profit from sweat that's not theirs. Lift your horn, lift your voice. It's for you. Make the choice. It's the people's history. Free art on the Bowery, the garden of power. Contemplation's bower down on the Bowery, where art knows how to live. Okay, that's that. I'm going to read one more poem. And this is one that I wrote a year ago for Steve Cannon when he died. Now, the Gathering of the Tribes that Steve started, the marvelous gallery, performance space, crash pad, magazine, lives on under the direction of Trevisa Woods. And if you haven't been out to see, gatheringofthetribes.com and send your poems. And Ishmael Reed is editing an anthology for tribes right now. It carries on Steve's lineage. And that's something to carry. I miss Steve so much. And this is a praise poem for Steve Cannon called After a Hard Rain. He's gone from the hillside that demands reparations. He's gone from the interchange that never stops changing. He's gone from the poem that will never be spoken. He's gone from the gathering where all tribes are represented. He's gone from the future that he was already living. He's gone from the emails that he delete before receiving. He's hammering the verses on whalebone and cardboard. He's drifting in consciousness where no one can find him. He's hearing your words before you can speak them. He's making love in the sunshine with sunshine brothers and sisters. He's inventing new ways for the galleries to blast off. He can't believe he has to repeat his slogans of simplicity. He refuses to understand your system of logic. He matches your bet and raises your ante. He manifests his destiny inside of a flower. He takes truth to the limits and leaves us there gasping. He can't stop the world, so the world closes around him. He ran off with his lover when no one was watching. He climbed the tall mountains and fished us from deep waters. He lifted up the wasted and wanted the wanted. His victory will always be us just sitting around, even in a Zoom room. Time is an anchor he just tossed overboard. Equality was his breath and he breathed it continuously. He never let on and we'll never know. His boots were leaking and his body was swaying. His life was the question that answered the answer. His rigorous approach was masked in a carnival. Shut up, you dullards, and give him the floor, and give him the ceiling and windows and door, and stay out of his ways as he mows us all down. And he keeps on walking as we all lie down, and we kneel at his gravestone, but don't heed his demands. He was asking of us to give the way he did. Now you must decide how you will live. He had nothing to die for, but he died for us anyway. He had everything to live for, but he gave it all away. Now that it's over, he says, you begin. Now that he's gone, you welcome him in. There's no one like it, so it must be him. And the tribes are all gathering as we sit on the rim, on the edge, on the verge, as we gather it around. Your communities need you, and Steve is beside you. Ride off in the sunset and pull the night o'er you. Take off your blinders, sing a new horizon. There's nothing more to say, so now go ignore him. And he keeps it going in the silence that follows. He keeps it going in the silence that follows. There's nothing like a Zoom silence, is there? Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Brooklyn Rail, Emily, Nick, Fong, the whole crew.
Thank you so much, Bob. That was an amazing reading, and thank you for bringing everyone together today. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Dewi. Thank you, Samantha. It's been so incredible to hear each of you. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Before we go, this October marked the Rail's 20th anniversary, and we'll be celebrating all the way into 2021. So please consider making a year beginning contribution to keep the Rail and our special projects free, relevant, and independent, like the NSE Lunchtime Series and We the Immigrants Project. Every amount matters to us. Our goal is to double last year's participation and reach 500 donors. So you can check out the chat for more information or ask one of our team. And please join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for Common Ground on the third space. Curator and January guest critic Jasmine Wahi is joined by artist Jarrett Federa and poet K. Desiree Millwood for a dialogue on hybridity and the third space, from the social to the political and everything in between. And please join us next Wednesday for another radical poetry reading. But you all can now turn on your microphones and say goodbye as you leave. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Nick.
Bob, thank you, Brooklyn Rail. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob.
Wonderful
Thank
way to spend an
Thank
afternoon. I
you.
really appreciate it.
It was marvelous. Thank
How
you.
else can we get Dewi Prysor and Mohamad Hodeib in the same room?
Thank you so much.
Samantha Thornhill, Mercado. I love it.